Hey, everybody, it's Mike Watson. Common Things, Uncommon Ways podcast series. We're on lucky episode number 13, and I have got a good one for you today. I have been studying a lot about improving my focus in business, especially as we go through a little bit of a tumultuous cycle in the marketplace and the economy. And I came across a video from Kevin O'Leary, who's on Shark Tank. Pretty much everybody knows who Kevin O'Leary was. What I didn't know about Kevin was he used to work with Steve Jobs over at Apple. And one of the things in this video that I saw was that Steve Jobs was incredibly gifted in focusing only on the most important tasks that were in front of him. In fact, he was known to be vicious and ruthless about what he would focus on and what he would allow in his life. He wanted to be a part of the very most important decisions, the very most important part of crafting Apple and the products and the designs that were coming forward. And Kevin O'Leary said he was 100% intense, 100% ruthless, and 100% brutal. He used harsh words all the time about maintaining his focus. And there was a scientific theory called the signal-to-noise ratio. And the signal-to-noise ratio is essentially a measure of the quality of a signal. And this can be in the military, can be in all kinds of electronic applications, but it's the measure of the intensity of the signal that you're listening for, and then comparing that signal to the background or offsetting noise. And I thought, man, how cool is that? And Kevin O'Leary shared what he believes Steve Jobs' most important qualities were in a business version of the signal-to-noise theory. And the signal-to-noise theory in business basically says the following things. Number one, you want to focus on the top 3 to 5 most critical tasks that need to be accomplished in the next 18 hours to advance whatever mission you have or your business has. If it's not in those top 3 to 5 tasks, it doesn't get focused on or it gets delegated. Next, noise in business is anything that interferes with that signal. So that's the signal to you, the most important things that you need to handle in your business for it to move forward, for it to overcome, and for it to be unfettered in its growth moving forward. But that noise is anything that interferes with the completion of those critical tasks, including unnecessary meetings, extra features, or even distracting news. Now, Steve Jobs was reputed to have had an 80-20 ratio in his signal to noise. So 80% of his day, his time would be focused on those top 3 to 5 most critical missions. And the way watching Kevin O'Leary describe this in this video, the way he described it, it felt a lot like Steve Jobs was much closer to 100% focused on that top crust of things. But the number that he quoted was 80-20 split. He was dedicated to 80% of his 18-hour workday. Think about that for a second. He just said 18-hour workday. These titans of industry work enormous amount of hours. Many of us don't possess that type of work ethic. And we say we want to get to our goals, but we don't possess that work ethic. So that workday, that 18-hour workday, in his signal to noise, so 80% is signal, 20% is noise. Now, the way he described this, I love this word, was ruthless elimination. The ruthless elimination. And what he focused on, Jobs' method involving, is this signal or noise. So every task, every question, every issue that came up in the office surrounding the business, is this paramount to what I want my intense focus to be on for my time? And if it's not a signal. If it's not, it's noise. And noise has to be eliminated so we can focus on that high-level signal. Next, the result. This intense focus made Jobs extraordinarily effective at getting things done and driving revolutionary growth for Apple. Part of the video that I saw was Kevin O'Leary intensely describing screaming matches, yelling matches, swear word-laden tirades at things and people that were trying to detract from his signal during his business. I don't recommend you go around acting like that or talking like that, but these uber successful people are oftentimes extremely connected past perhaps a healthy status to these outcomes, and one of the reasons why they're also very successful. So O'Leary was sharing this with business leaders and other groups, emphasizing that mastering this ratio protects time, energy, and genius. So one of the things that I wanted to do is share with you some of the hallmarks of the signal-to-noise ratio in the scientific community, and then give you some ideas and some strategies on how to have a better signal-to-noise ratio in your business. Now, before I do that, I want to describe two parts of my career. Many of you know I built a very successful career over 16 years from 1994 to 2008. And if you've been around for more than 5 minutes, you know in 2008, 9, and 10, we just had the brutal collapse of the market. Worst economic time frame of our lifetimes. I had built, over that 16-year period, 8 companies. I had 53 employees. We had 650 homes and apartments, and we were doing business in 11 states at the time. And at that point, I was highly, highly, highly focused. And what I didn't know, looking back now, was the way that I practiced my business was absolutely in concert with this signal-to-noise theory. And so what that looked like was there were 5 or 6 very high-level things that I did every day, and everything else got moved to the side, typically through delegation. So everything else that came to me outside of these tasks were delegated to the important people that would be most helpful in solving those issues. And if they didn't fall into delegatable tasks, they were simply ignored or removed entirely. Now, the way I like to look at this in business is, let's assume that we have this field of focus for our business. This is our field of focus. Now, this is a huge field of focus on what you could be doing no matter what you're doing, if you're in real estate or anything else. And each of these things, if you had to make a list, and this is sometimes very important, if you were to take time out and make a list of the 25 tasks, the 25 most important tasks for your business, and 25 things that come up, some of them might be very innocuous and small tasks. For example, someone has to get the mail. You can't go without getting the mail interminably. Someone has to get the mail. Someone has to get office supplies. Someone has to clean the office. There's a lot of things that need to happen for you to function in your environment and be highly focused to your signal. But guess what? It doesn't have to be you. So back then, I started my career, and after 16 years, I had 53 people. And this was what my business did. This is what my companies did. This is what our focuses were. But my portion of this was literally this wide. I wanted to focus on this most important crust. And those were generally the things that drove revenues. I've been around a lot of people over the years who made a huge effort in their business, but oftentimes didn't make any money. And a big part of that is when you look at this big scope, if the most important part of this field of play for your business is this little section over here, and you're spending all of this time doing this portion of your field, you may not be doing those most important tasks where the money is made. So as a business owner, I had these 8 businesses, and we literally focused on this portion, and then I hired amazing people to delegate the rest to. Now, fast forward a few years, I lost my business, lost everything, and I had to restart again. So I restarted again, and I opened my business again, my real estate development and investing business. And lo and behold, I was the only person, and I was the only employee of this business. So this entire field was on my shoulders. Think of that for a minute. Someone who had 52 or 53 employees handling so many important things and so many lesser things, all of a sudden being handed this massive playing field with all these issues. And I'll tell you what, it didn't go well. When I had to go get the mail, when I had to go take checks to the bank to deposit back before there was online banking, and I had to go get office supplies, there were things that absolutely drove me nuts. And it made me furious because I wanted to focus on making money. And here's a tell to you, if you're not focusing on the things that make money, you won't make any money. So interestingly, I started building again, and to give you a really cool forward to what we've done here at Summa Terra Ventures is I started with this field, and then every time there was a segment of my business that either wasn't my signal as the owner or leader of the business, I would hire someone, and that field would shrink. Then I would handle these items, and then when I was ready to grow again, I would hire someone new, and my field would shrink again. And over time, I have been able to add hires to where my focus is back to 3 or 4 or 5 key components, and everything else is delegated. And this is how companies are built. Now, one of the unique things that's different about us this time is the business that I lost at 53 employees, 650 homes and apartments. I was able to build the business after the crash of the market back again. I built a 5 times business in 1/5 of the time with 1/7 of the employees. Let me say those numbers again. I built a 5 times larger business than the one I lost in 1/5 of the time it took to build the business that I lost with 1/7 of the employees. And now right here at Summa Terra Ventures, we have 8 of us right now. And we're doing a fair amount of business. And one of the reasons that we're able to do that is you don't just have to delegate to employees. We have over 100 capital partners in our projects across the country. These are subcontractors, they're contractors, they're business professionals, they're people that are interested in real estate and learning development, or just people that want to be in a great partnership where they could learn about development and get great returns. So think about that for a minute. I have over 100 people or LLCs that I can delegate to on the tasks of the assets that we're managing. In addition to that, we have a lot of third-party groups that do work for us, and we delegate a huge portion of our work to those guys too. So a lot of what we're doing here is delegated even outside of the company. And then we have, I like to say, one of my new favorite sayings is I don't have employees, I have managers. What I mean by that is every employee manages something. If you're managing entitlement on projects, if you're managing property management, if you're managing construction, if you're managing the finances and accounting, I don't hire employees, I hire managers who manage. And that teaches them that there's a very narrow area that they want to be experts at. So really cool thought process to watch us rebuild this company. Again, saying, what's the signal to my business? Those are the revenues generating activities. How do I hear those? And how do I drown out the rest of the noise? So what I wanted to do for you is run through some lists that we have on really cool things, just ideas and tenets of the signal noise theory on how to apply this in general. And then I want to tighten that up on what you'll do in your business for yourself moving forward. So the first thing is we want to distinguish the essential from the irrelevant. Can you imagine being on a submarine out in the world somewhere and you're listening in, trying to hear the enemy talking to itself, but there's all of these other noises on this frequency. You want to hear what they're saying and literally get rid of everything else. This would be the irrelevant. And then you want to highly focus on what the enemy is talking about on that very hard to hear communication system, for example. So this is a very intense example of the signal to noise ratio, signal to noise theory. So we want to distinguish the essential, and then we want to get rid of the irrelevant. The greats are undeniably aggressive on getting rid of everything off their plate that doesn't have relevance. Can you imagine Jeff Bezos or Sergey Brin or Kevin O'Leary, for that matter, or Elon Musk paying attention to something that isn't relevant to the overall success of their business? These are highly intense and focused individuals, and we can learn from that. The next thing we want to focus on is quality over quantity. So many people focus on how much they're doing instead of the quality of what they're doing. Long story ago, I used to own a RE/MAX franchise when I was a real estate agent and broker. And I had agents. I had at one point 17 agents in a small town. And I would have occasionally an agent or two that would come to me and say, hey, I'm just not making any money. I'm not putting any deals under contract. I'm not getting any listings. I need you to sit down and tell me what I'm doing wrong. And I'd say, hey, great. It's Tuesday at 3:00. Why don't you come in tomorrow at 10 a.m.? But I don't want you to come in and talk to me until you've done this. I want you to list out the top, the 10 or 15 things that you did for the last 7 days. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday last week, Monday, Tuesday this week. That's 5 days. Maybe go back a couple more days and come in, and I want you to list for me everything that you did. So these guys would come in and they were very concerned they weren't getting commissions and they weren't getting listings and finding buyers and putting projects under contract. And they would come in to me, and some of them I'd say, give me your 10 most important things you did. Literally 10 most important things you did. Some of the guys would come in with 15 or 20 things that they did. And some of them would come in with a smaller list than 10. So those that had more items, I'd look at them and I'd say, hey, there's really nothing on this list that would generate revenue. Let me tell you what I did yesterday. And I would go through, and I used to average anywhere from 70 to 100 transactions a year or more. And we had lots and lots of listing amongst other businesses and activities at that time. This was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I would show them, compare the list of what I did yesterday on my real estate business as a realtor or a broker and compare it to your list. And they would have things like, I would find 10 properties that were for sale. And then I would research who the owners were. And then I would reverse index the owners' names. And then I would find the addresses. And then I would call the title company and ask them to pull up the information on those properties. And so much of the stuff they did didn't even get them to a conversation with the potential seller on who might have the property. And so they spent a lot of time working, some of them, very, very high-level workers, and they would spend hours and hours and hours, but they weren't doing things that had an overall effect to the income. Now, 2 important points here. Those are important things that would need to happen if you wanted to approach your business that way, but you didn't have to spend entire days on that, first of all. And secondly, that's a great thing to hire an assistant or a part-time assistant and delegate those things. Delegate those things to that assistant so that those simple things are something that someone else could do while you're focusing on much more important things. So the second type of person in that was the person that wasn't doing much at all. They were lying to themselves. They were having a high-level work ethic. And I used to catch people in my office occasionally. They'd be there 6, 7, 8, 10 hours a day, and they'd sit in there and play solitaire. And you'd ask them, hey, what you up to? And they didn't have a lot going. So you have to have that high work ethic so that you can focus on those money-making activities in whatever business you're in. Now, here at Summa Terra Ventures, I have a very, very narrow focus. If you were to come here and ask one of my partners or my employees or other people for me to do things, like, for example, I do a lot of seminars and trainings. Those are very important for us because in those seminars and trainings, first of all, that can often be a revenue earner for our company. And while I don't do a lot of seminars, there are some revenues there. But in those seminars, we teach people how to find land, and we also teach people how to become capital partners in one of our projects. And those are crucial. New phenomenal pieces of land that we can build apartments on, that we can go contact sellers on. Crucial, crucial, crucial stuff for us, okay? Next thing is capital. People that bring capital in, that's the lifeblood of our business, is money. So I would spend an enormous amount of time on that. But the things that were most important for me have been capital, contracts, partners, and problem shooting. So we have capital issues, anything that has to do with capital. Again, we have quite a large capital outlay here with all the different projects that we're doing. Dealing with those partners, when someone that puts capital into one of our deals to become a capital partner, that's crucial for us as well. The next important thing for us is the contracts that we have on either buying properties or hiring third parties or selling properties, or any type of contract that comes in front of us. I get to see those and deal with those. And then the other one that I didn't mention is working with the cities and counties at a high level. So my staff here is very versed on, for example, the entitlement process, the building permit process. There's parts of that they do very well that I wouldn't get in the middle of. But if we have a problem or a legal problem, or we have a unique circumstance on a property, I'm absolutely the one that gets involved with the city. Now, if you try to get me outside of those tasks and get me somewhere else, for example, I do a training There's 70 people coming to the training. And my cell phone number, by the way, is just about everywhere. You search for Summa Terra Ventures, you're going to find my personal cell phone number. Do you know how many texts I get leading up to the event of what's the address? When we've sent out emails, right? What time's lunch going to be tomorrow? And it's like these people say, hey, I'm going to reach out to Mike. And it's kind of a natural thought process. They would reach out to me. But the idea that they would ask me, for example, what the address is when they have an email that has that, and also that there's also other staff that could handle that. I don't know how they think that I value my time when they really think I'm the right person to talk to about that. So there's constant demands on your time. How are you going to protect yourself from that? Now, in addition to quality over quantity, we also want to have signal weakness requires careful attention. So it's not always clear, for example, for us, where our next deal is going to come from. It's not always clear on people that say they want to put capital in one of our deals, who's serious and who's not. It's not always clear on who might want to sell property that I'll meet with or who might want to buy property. So that signal strength is crucial, that you're able to get through that and read to what's the real signal. There's a lot of people that want to grab your time. There's a lot of things that you'll do to deflect from the hard reality that you have to produce. If we were back in olden times and we needed to go hunting to capture food for our family, you wouldn't go hunting and sit by a lake and throw stones in the river or the lake, right? You would say, hey, I got to track some animals. I got to take some weapons. I got to get out there and I got to get serious about it. My family's starving. Very much more intense approach than how a lot of us approach our businesses. So the next one is the noise is unavoidable. There's noise literally everywhere we go. I've got a phone here off to the side, like many of us do in our lives, and it is going off on phone calls, texts, emails, all kinds of things. And I'll tell you what, that's just a microcosm. What you guys see on a phone is a microcosm to your business. How much time do we spend on a phone? How much time do we waste on apps and games and scrolling and all of that kind of stuff? That this phone, for the most part, is absolute noise. It's 100% noise. And it's amazing that what this phone here possesses, this is an iPhone 15, what this phone possesses, it possesses a better processing computer, and it's a more powerful computer than the one that was used by many of the early people. Like you look at the people that founded some of the great computer companies, some of the training they did in the 70s and 80s, the supercomputers that they sought out. These guys, Bill Gates, for example, I believe he was at the University of Michigan, but don't quote me on that. But he had tried to spend an enormous amount of time with the most powerful campus computer that they had, a supercomputer. And he oftentimes would have to go into the computer lab at 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning just to get a few minutes on this most amazing computer available at the time. And this phone that I have sitting here next to me processes and is a more powerful computer than the one he would seek after on the entire campus at the university that he attended. So, but phones are very, very unique. You can spend and waste a lot of time on that. So filtering makes better decision-making. So we want to filter the noise. How can you tell the noise from the reality? And a good way to do this, by the way, is start every day, make a list of your most important tasks, put a star next to the ones that you have to do, put a second star by the ones that have a revenue consequence. And the ones that I like to focus on the most are if we're going to lose revenue. For example, if builder calls and said, hey, I've got to charge for this thing over here. It's outside the context of our contract. It's not going to produce additional income to the project. Obviously, not losing that revenue or having those costs come in are much more important to me than going and earning money. So the loss of revenues, the earning of income, those are the things that we want to intensely focus on. Filters allow us to do that. So start your day with a full list of the most important things. And then the second thing that's super crucial to you is end your day and make a list. So if you have the list that you started your day with, you make a list at the end of the day, what you did, sometimes there's a big disparity on what you should have done and what you actually did. This is very, very telling. Have to focus. People waste so much time. So much time wasting. I see this a lot in the building industry. We have a subcontractor that works for us, and he's famous for sending more guys to the job site than he needs to, which is great because a lot of the subcontractors don't send enough guys. But he sends more guys, and oftentimes you'll find his crews, literally, there's one guy working and 3 or 4 guys standing around supervising, and you almost feel like they work for the State Department of Transportation. So you go up to them and say, hey, guys, what are you doing? What are you doing here? What are you focusing on? So gotta have everybody on your team, not just you. And that's an important point about this. If I have this big scope here of what we do here at Summa Terra Ventures or any business, and my portion of that is this, everybody has to have that intense excitement, enthusiasm to their portion. Everybody has to do that at that same level. Everybody has to participate at that level of importance. And that's how teams are more effective and more efficient. And if everyone has the same level of feeling about how important their tasks are, their signals will be different than yours, but your signals will be revenue earning and their signals will be supporting signals to what it is that you do. So we have to have filtering and decision making. The next thing is context. Everything has to be taken in context. So context helps determine and helps us understand signal strength. Next, we can say noise can masquerade as a signal. Let me give you an example where noise can masquerade as a signal. And if you don't handle things where noise can become a signal. If you said, hey, getting the mail every day, as much as we hate snail mail these days, getting the mail every day is noise. So I'm not going to get the mail anymore. Let's pretend you went 180 days without getting a piece of mail because it's noise. And almost every single day that mail is noise to you. However, there are some important things that show up in the mail. And if you don't handle them in a timely fashion, they can become a signal. So they can come to a very important and delegatable task, and they can rise up in importance as they're ignored. So we have to be very, very careful that getting the mail is noise, but not getting the mail for a long period of time can make noise become a signal. Interesting perspective. Next, patience increases the signal detection. So if we're patient in what we do, the signal detection becomes better and we can understand the message clear. Next, we have systems require calibration. You're always filtering. So here's what I was supposed to do at the beginning of the day. Here's what I was supposed to do at the end of the day. We can calibrate our focus at the beginning of each day so that what is done at the end of each day has a different result. And it's not just that we did the things that we were supposed to do at the end of that day. It's the quality of the effort too. A lot of people say, hey, I've got to get these 10 things done today. And at the end of the day, they got 3 of the 10 done, and the other 7 were neglected because a bunch of noise came in. A bunch of noise came in and disrupted that signal strength, and then they go home that night and wonder why their business wasn't more profitable. And you do that for days or weeks or months or years, and you end up with a business that doesn't produce revenues and a business that doesn't have that success story. So focus is your greatest advantage. You have to learn to highly focus on what matters the most. What matters the most. And again, I'll come back to something I said earlier. Can you imagine telling Elon Musk that he needs to do something that he knows is against his revenue? I mean, he's famous for doing things like they've got a motor or an engine problem in one of the products that they're building. And the man will go set up a cot next to that car or that truck or whatever it is that he's doing. He will set up a cot next to it and he'll work on it 18 hours a day and he'll stay there. That's his one and only signal. He'll stay there until he improves it and fix it and makes it better than anyone on earth could, to a point where he now has the makings of a product that will sell unbelievably well and will cause high customer demand. And he has this intense focus, and that in that moment is his signal. And he has that superpower of stopping everything around him and saying, I'm going to handle this item. Now, Elon Musk is also unique in that he allows noise to get into his life. How many times do you see him on X, for example, or in the news talking about random things, politics? These are things that have nothing to do, oftentimes, with the quality of his business and the outcome of their values. The stock values, revenue values that have nothing to do with how his businesses perform. So yeah, some of these guys you can watch very easily and see just how well they're doing. Now, I want to take a business application. I'm going to go through this a little bit faster, but I want to take the signal to noise ratio and make a business application on some things that we want to talk about. And I've already talked about some of these, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. The first one is focus on core drivers, not distractions. What are the core drivers of your business? What are the income earners? What is it that's going to make money for your business? Focus on those and not anything else. Next one is to detect early market shifts. You have to do the process that I have shared over and over again, which is we focus on trends and outliers. So the way everyone does everything that they do in business becomes a trend on how things happen. Now, the people that stay in the trends are just like everyone else. One of the things that I love to teach is you have to give people experiences that they're not getting in other places. So if we do everything in our business the way everyone else does them, we're a trend and we're going to get a trend result. And we're oftentimes going to get drowned out in the customer's mindset or their vista because we look and sound like everyone else. So these are the trends. I want to know exactly what the trends are because then I can say, how can I be different? How can I be different? Different is good. Different is good. So we have trends and then we have outliers. Outliers are the people or the businesses that were in the trend and they decided to do things differently. They decided to give different experiences. And the difference between the trends and the outliers are all the different signals that were available and listened to and perfected in the outlier businesses. So we've got these trends, then we have these signals that bring us to the outliers, and we can have outlier results, outlier revenues, outlier experiences, outlier growth, unbelievable options there. So we have to focus on that. So detect early market shifts. We have to filter customer feedback wisely. Customer feedback is crucial. That is a signal, absolutely. Real customers that respond and give feedback about our business. It's crucial for us to hear those voices and those feedback follow-ups. The next one is to accept noise as normal. Have you ever noticed how good you get at tuning things out? I don't know how many of you have had young children, but I hate to admit this, when some of my kids were young, you tend to be able to learn how to tune your kids out a little bit because there's a constant noise. If you don't learn how to tune out that noise, it will be a constant part of your life, and it can drive you nuts. And you don't want to tune out the kids when there's an issue or a problem, but if they're playing or having fun or singing or whatever it is they're doing, that can be very distracting if that's all that you're focusing on. So those things will be constant, and you have to learn how to filter them out. Next, you want to build systems that highlight signals. How would you build a system that highlights a signal? One of the good ones is QuickBooks. One of the good ones is tax returns. Take your QuickBooks, take your tax returns, and ask yourself, where are the revenues coming from? Do you know I do a lot of business coaching? I do a lot of personal development coaching in terms of the business side and real estate development and other things. And people come in and say, hey, I need to do better. I need to grow. And I say to them, literally up front, tell me the top 5 things that earned you the most revenue in the last year. And most people have to really, really, really think about them. And I said, rank them in the order of revenue. And I have this method to my madness. Rank them in the order of revenue. What was your top revenue producer last year, second revenue producer last year, third highest revenue producer last year? Most people can't answer that. They're not sure. And then I asked them, I want you to go back and get into your QuickBooks or whatever accounting methods you use, look at your tax returns. I want to see exactly what it is that drove those revenues. And I can't tell you, first of all, most people can't name those things. And secondly, and worse, when they bring back actual revenues, most of them are surprised. They're not even aware that the revenue drivers for their firm are different than what they thought they were, and they're different in size and in order and scope than what they had predicted that they were. And how could you run a business? How can you expect to be successful if you're not intimately aware of the revenues in your company and where they're coming from and how to drive more of them? So again, this is the signal noise ratio. Take a look at your books. Take a look at your revenue streams. Take a look at the last couple of big deals that you did. Where did they come from? What actions did they take? What were the things that led up to those successes? Are you repeating those? Are you doing them again and again? Have you systematized those? Have you clarified those? Have you refocused your team to those things? Most people Have not. And unfortunately, most people will not. You look at a group of individuals like real estate agents, national real estate agents average something like 4 or 5 real estate transactions a year. So a real estate professional who's gone to training, who's gone to school, who's in a professional brokerage, who has a professional training available all around them, they average less than 1 transaction every 2 months. It's unbelievable that a group of people that size with that amount of training available perform at that level. And it can be said just of almost any business that the top 10% of earners top 10% of earners are doing 90% of the business. And the bottom 90% of earners are doing 10% of the business. So you want to be a part of that. You want to be focused on that. So accept the noise as normal. Build systems or businesses that highlight signals. And the best thing that I've done, I think one of my great strengths is really honing in on those things that are most important and then removing or delegating away the things that aren't. And I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to build a bigger business after the crash in the marketplace and the loss of everything. A 5 times size business with much less time, much less employees, much less overhead was the high intensity focus that I had, that I knew what I had to do. I was highly focused on doing that. I was very good at getting rid of the things, either through delegation or permanent removal of the things that just didn't matter to the bottom line. Next, again, context gives clarity. You got to have context. You have to understand in business what it is, the context of things. Again, super, super important. Next, don't mistake spikes for trends. Always got to be focusing on this. Trends, outliers. Trends, outliers. A spike is very different. A spike is not a permanent trend. And so we want to make sure that we don't bet and change and retool our entire business on a flash, on something that would happen very, very quickly. Next, act with patience, not impulse. It's hard to be patient. Can you imagine Steve Jobs being patient with someone around him? Apparently, he was known for his tirades and his yelling and screaming. If you came into his scope and his view and you got in his way, it was not pretty. So patience has to happen in the right ways, but patience has to work with your business in terms of being impulsive. There's a difference from being impulsive. If whatever whim or thought or thing we have, you can give ear to it, you can listen to it, you can evaluate it, but be quick and be patient about the things that you know that work and stay focused with them. Stay focused and on task on those. Next, we have to train teams to filter too. So what we try to do here at Summa Terra Ventures, for example, and those that we work with and train and coach, we really try to train them to filter out what's most important. Here's what's most important to start the day. Here's what actually happened. Oh my goodness, the 10 things I had listed, 3 were done, the other 7, 2 of them were an emergency and 5 were an utter disaster that I spent time and focus on those. You have to train everyone in your companies and everyone around you that you're depending on to focus on those things in those ways. So you have to protect leadership focus too. I can't tell you how many great leaders we've had that have super skills or superpowers of their own, but they all have noise problems. Everyone you're going to meet has a noise problem. Guess what? You have a noise problem too. It's just common human nature to have deflection from what we have. I have had people who, no matter what was going on, there was a family issue, right? There was always a family issue. I've had other people who had constant health concerns. Some of those are reasonable, right? People really do have health concerns, but people that chronically have health issues or concerns is a different issue. So there are people that are chronically focused on things that just don't produce the revenues that we're searching for. And if you want to have a company that's designed and wired to focus on the most important things, then you have to have leaders that do that too. You have to have that leadership focus. Unbelievable leadership focus things there. So very, very important that we have that mindset, right? That we train on those things, that we understand those things. And again, that signal to noise ratio is the signal is the single most important couple of things that you're going to do in your business. And for most of us that are business leaders, the signals are going to be the revenue producers. Now, interestingly, if you're an employee on a team, or you're an employee in a company and you want to rise up and become more important and you want to get promoted and you want to make more money. Here's a really big tip for you. Watch the leaders that you report to, watch the leaders around you, and ask, what is the noise in their life? What are the things that they struggle with, that get handed and put on their plate that they struggle with and they want to reduce, remove, or get rid of? And if you want to be an amazing employee, you can learn how to take the noise from those around you and have those things become your signal. I've had a number of personal assistants work for me over the years, for example. And the very, very best ones I've ever worked with over 31 years have focused on that. Hey, I know what Mike needs to do. When Mike gets off focus a little bit, I'm going to kind of gently urge him back. That's number one. Number two, I know what noise is to Mike. And the minute noise gets anywhere near his office, I'm out intercepting it and blocking it. The noise doesn't get to Mike. The noise gets to me, and I push that out to other parts of the company, and it doesn't have to touch Mike. So you can train personal assistants, you can train other leaders to get that noise out. And again, highly, highly, highly focused on the signals. What are the signals of your business? Do you see them? Do you hear them? Are you good at following them? Are you good at taking them down and being an assassin when it comes to absolutely obliterating the list of things that you need to do each and every day to be successful? Take this to heart. Really think this through. Signal noise theory, you can look that up as a scientific theory. You could Google the signal noise theory with Steve Jobs. Great stuff. Put it into your business and you'll have great success moving forward. We'll catch you later.